But Anderson followed the trail of illegal drugs that are making their way from South America through corrupt African officials and terrorist groups on their way into Europe. This is his debrief.
They actually told us why they'd agreed to let us film. They said they were so sick of government corruption, which is strange because they're benefiting from government corruption. You know, they know they can pay off the right officials and there's no chance they'll get caught. But they were saying that the government is doing so little for the people, in particular the poor of Venezuela, while they're getting rich. They're so sick of it, they were willing to do this to expose the government for what they were, even though it might actually end up damaging their operation in the long run. When you try and make these films, at some point you meet the right person who's deciding whether or not to give you access to something. And they lay out how it's going to work and what you have to do to get access. And so we knew fairly early on in Caracas that what we had to do was be hooded for an hour and a half and get driven around so we wouldn't know where his stash house was. And I thought, fine, it's no problem, we can do that. I've done similar things in the past. But then when his two drivers came to pick us up from this underground car park, you could just tell these guys were killers. Just by the way they searched me and handled me and looked at me, you thought these guys could kill us like that. Some very nerve-wracking moments on the way to meet that trafficker. The DEA claim that they've intercepted phone conversations between Islamist drug traffickers or Islamists who are involved in drug trafficking who say this will weaken Europe and make it easier for us to take over. I didn't come across much evidence to suggest that was true. I don't think they particularly care because they're not doing the drugs themselves. The drug trafficker we met in Niger said he had no choice to do it. It's the only way he could make any money, but that he had made a lot of money and that he would like to have spent some of that money to pay for himself to go on Hajj to Mecca. But he said he wasn't allowed to use that money for Hajj because the money was dirty money. So, you know, it's not haram, it's not forbidden for them to take part in the drug trafficking trade, but they were aware that what they were doing was questionable and the money couldn't be used for something like Hajj. We followed the penultimate part of the journey through Africa. So we followed it up to the border with Libya, and Libya is another failed state now in that region. So it crosses the border into Libya very easily. There are various armed groups can take it from there to the Mediterranean coast, and then it goes across the Mediterranean Sea and into Europe. And from what we were told from the law enforcement side to the drug trafficking side, it's very easy to make that last part of the journey. And there's very little chance of it getting intercepted either in Libya or somewhere in the Mediterranean Sea or, you know, when it actually arrives in Europe. You know, Libya is a completely failed state now. So A, there's probably no one looking for drug traffickers, and B, there's probably enough armed groups who are perfectly willing to help the drug trade. European authorities have got their hands full trying to, you know, stop migrants coming from North Africa to Europe. And, you know, it's a very well-oiled trade of migrants coming from North Africa to Europe. So adding a few bags of coke here and there is really not difficult and very, very difficult to police. And I think it's just, you know, it's one of many routes. And I think it's just one of the easiest routes, or one of the routes where there's the most, you know, the highest chances of success. It's going through a long series of failed states, you know, from states on the coast, Liberia, Sierra Leone, Cameroon, Nigeria, to, you know, Mali, Algeria, Libya, Niger, completely failed states where if you've got a bit of money, it's very easy to pay off government officials because government officials are paid so little. In most of the countries that the coke goes through, the drug traffickers are more powerful. At one point I was sitting in the desert just north of Agadez, and I was thinking, well, Mali's that way, Algeria's that way, Libya's that way, Nigeria's that way. I mean, not hard to smuggle anything through any of those countries. I mean, we saw lorries with 50, 60 people on board and tons of bags full of stuff and no sign of the authorities whatsoever. If it's easy to get that much stuff across borders, then it's really not hard to get a few bricks this big full of coke. Not hard at all.